Welcome to Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, the podcast that celebrates the people, places, and stories that make Rocky and the wider Central Queensland community extraordinary. I firmly believe we're sitting on a golden goose in this region, and I love meeting the people who are doing the quiet work behind the scenes to keep the community thriving. They run our sports clubs, they organise our charities, they support the people who are lost in the system, and they volunteer their time so generously. And I feel like the luckiest person in the world when someone shares their story with me privately. And now I'm privileged to bring their stories and achievements to you, the listeners of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson. Sometimes they wonder why they were asked, thinking that what they're doing and what they've done is not that big of a deal. And I can hand on heart tell you that it absolutely is. Other times, my guests are ecstatic to be asked and they look forward to sharing a piece of their Rocky and Central Queensland story. Thank you for listening in. I truly appreciate you being here. Today's guest is Michael McCabe. Now, Michael has spent 60 years in community music across Central Queensland as a performer and as an organiser. It started with the Rocky High Orchestra at the Municipal Theatre and has run through Queensland Band Championships, pit orchestras, and since 2019, the Rockhampton Symphony Orchestra at the Pilbeam Theatre. Very recently, the Capricornians' Echoes of Europe concert had a guest violinist, Margaret Blades, and it marked Michael's 60th year of it. Michael is still flying the flag for regional live music and the volunteers who keep it going. And lucky for me, before I hit record on this podcast, I got an incredible amount of history in a very short period of time. So I really appreciate Michael being here on the podcast. And I do absolutely agree with him that Rockhampton is prominent in the arts world. And I will let Michael talk to this a little bit more, that if we did have a state of origin here, we'd attract people from around the world. And as it is, we do have some quite amazing performers come to Rockhampton, and I really look forward to inviting you, Michael, to share a little bit more about that as we go through this podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So before we really get stuck into the questions that I like to ask, I'm curious to know, if you could be an expert at anything at all in the world, what would it be and why?
I'm fascinated with the deep history, geological history of the world and where we live, from before we were even Pangaea, Gondwana land, and then to the Europeans where this great south land, Terra Australis, and it was just a fascination. And then, of course, over that period of time, we were connected to major land masses, separated from major land masses. Much of where the country we live on at the coast here was underwater. Much of our Central Highlands, which is all the coal seams. So it's just a fascinating history. And then, of course, with the arrival of people some 50, 60,000 years ago, that landscape was changing with the climate change, the post-ice age climate change. And that changed again as people arrived. The land was drying out naturally through the geological and climatic factors. Then, of course, the Archer brothers turned up in 1853 and railways, wheat, wool, gold, copper, and where we're heading next. Just absolutely fascinating. I think it's worth an opera.
Well, that's a fitting way to deliver it. Absolutely. It is so incredibly evident that in the space of a couple of minutes, the amount of history that you hold within yourself that you're able to share, it's just incredible, especially for someone like myself who has a deep appreciation for this region. And I don't know half of what is out there to know, just incredible. But thank you so much. So tell me a little bit about very long history in music and arts, like a lifetime of experience. So tell me a little bit about who those key moments or people were in your life that essentially shaped you into this person who loves music, history, and, maybe even the story about the train bridge that happens to be my background.
Oh, yes, the train bridge finished in 1889. The railway line was already in Emu Park before the bridge went in, and it's a wonderful spot. A little modern history, the current bypass stroke ring road originally had designs to run the railway around outside Rockhampton, which would be wonderful to get the train out of Denison Street, and the railway bridge would have been a fantastic viewing site for crocodiles, pop-up restaurants, cafes, etc. But it's a wonderful facility on our Tanuba Fitzroy River, the second largest river flowing into the sea in Australia. What got me going, I didn't know apparently my mum gave up piano after being rapped on the knuckles with a ruler back sometime early last century. Dad
Mm.
didn't really know, but played banjo mandolin when he was a young teacher in North Queensland in the 1920s and 30s before the war. But I was inspired when the Queensland Symphony Orchestra would come to town on the Sunlander on a train from Brisbane. They'd stop at all the centres all the way to Cairns and just loved it. And my mum bought me a season ticket for what was then the ABC concert series at the age of 12, and I continued that right through to when the ABC had to shed those concerts. And so there was always this feeling. So I was lucky to go to a high school long before there was music programs in schools, but a number of devoted teachers. There was an oboe player, a piano player, a violin player who were just teachers. My chemistry teacher, Don Burns, for example, they had an orchestra going, and that orchestra went from just a drums and a stick bass through to a full orchestra with a jazz band, a big band, a Tijuana brass group, etc. So I joined that and always had this dream of playing an orchestra. Shortly after school, we did all the musicals, King and I, through to Guys and Dolls. Shortly after that, I was called up for national service, and playing a trumpet allowed me to get out of being a grunt, and I could join the artillery band at Singleton. Came home, what am I going to do? Sell the trumpet. At that time, they were talking about a youth orchestra, which I joined in 1974 when I was still a youth. And that orchestra is still going now, plus 50 years. And we always knew that we had enough people in town to form an orchestra, very talented people, but you needed a spark to organise it. We'd had orchestras come and go. We'd done some great things with the Garden Symphony No. 2, with Johann Katz-Chernin, the Russian-Australian composer. But Sean Davis, who came up from Brisbane, now moved to Fraser Coast, said, let's have an orchestra. So we said, let's do it. So we've created a structure, a challenge to financially run an orchestra. I won't say herding cats, but it is challenging to get 50, 60, or in the case of the Messiah last year, we had basically a 60-piece orchestra and an 80-piece choir made up from 4 choirs. That's quite a challenge to get all in one place at one time on the same note in tune, but we did it. And we packed it out with 2 houses, 1,400 people. So it was possible to do. I'd seen that happen when I travelled Australia with my job in the public service. And in Darwin, I saw that a town bigger than Rockhampton, but Central Queensland population is bigger than Darwin, but spread out. I thought it can be done. It's a challenge, but we did it. And in the meantime, of course, there were opportunities to play in brass bands. And I played in the Capricorn Silver Band for many years. And the other thing that does, even though I was born in Rockhampton, but moved and worked in Darwin, Townsville, Canberra and other places, but came home because I knew that there was a solid art music scene. And I've also been in pit orchestras and sometimes on stage with Opera Queensland's local productions and musical union, etc. So it's a whole of life experience. And I encourage everyone to keep going with that violin or saxophone or whatever it is. And the parents to accept that there will be some costs involved in upgrading the instruments, but worthwhile a lifelong worthwhileness. And I've always said to people, no matter how stressful your job is, going to your rehearsal, it takes you out of that stressful workspace, and you then have to have another stress of playing in time, watching the conductor, etc. It breaks the cycle of your stressful job, which you have to go back to on Monday.
Absolutely. And as with many community organisations and groups and clubs and not-for-profits, and it really does stop you in your tracks, and you get to reframe and be a part of something bigger than work, life, family.
Absolutely.
Mm.
But one of the challenges, of course, is I always said I wouldn't do what my father did. Dad was a school teacher. Mum had been a nurse before she had all 8 children post-war baby boomers. And Dad and Mum were always on committees. Dad was on 5 or 6 committees at any given time, some state-level bodies for parents and citizens groups. Mum ran canteens, and Dad usually always ended up as president, secretary, or treasurer, and come out from work after school, have dinner, and go to a meeting. And I said, I'll never do that. I end up myself on multiple times 5 different committees, from land care groups to the initial road running club, Rocky Road runners, etc. And but once that was the thing you joined the committee. People stepped up from committee member to a secretary, a treasurer, a president, rotated through that. Society's changed a lot. We're all working seemingly longer hours rather than working smarter. Young people they start working very early to get money to go to uni, buy the iPhone, whatever they do, and our time frames are less, and the responsibilities of committees have increased. Once my group of people can say, let's run this, and you just do it now. You need public liability insurance, you need reporting, etc., etc., etc.
Mm,
Run it as a business, and at the moment we have a small handful of people run the orchestra, and so it's encouraging people to say how to have an efficient business system that allows you to run a community group is a constant
mm,
challenge for many people. But I encourage people to step into that space. You just need to have an exit plan sometimes, so you're not the same secretary, president, treasurer for 30 years. Because
yes.
when that happens, many organisations have a transitional problem, a succession plan, and now we're
Mm.
currently looking at that. We may get a new theatre in the early 1930s. Sorry, 2032, maybe if it happens. I've been talking about that'd be great, but make sure the loading dock
Yes.
isn't as high as the current one. But I said by then, I hope not to be the one loading in the truck. I need someone to step up.
Yes, yes. I hear that from so many different community groups and organizations, and even yeah, I completely resonate. It is a very real challenge, and it's a combination of factors, of course, that society has changed, and but yeah, we need to do things a little bit differently, but we also need to consider, yeah, previously you would make a decision, a group of people would decide to do something, they'd go and do it. Now you need, as you said, public liability, risk assessments, permissions, depending on, how big the organization is that you're volunteering inside of. But on the equipment upgrade point that you made, I am pretty sure there are 8 guitars in my house right now.
Hey, I've only got 4.
Well, there's acoustic, there's electric, there's
And a banjo
several
mandolin,
amplifiers. Oh, lovely.
which my dad used to play one the same as this.
Fantastic. Yes. I know more about music than I ever have known because my son is a very keen guitar player. But lucky for me, the people at Green Brothers are very patient with a woman who knows nothing about guitars. So funny. But yes, other children have learned saxophones and pianos. And I think there was something else in the mix there. But yeah, music is such a valuable skill to have. And even for those who don't continue it long term, which, you would hope that they do, but it's just that grounding and
Yeah, and we
understanding.
don't need everyone to continue into professional lives or teaching. Learning an instrument or singing or anything artistic on the stage early means that you become a future audience for the people who do continue.
Mm,
So, of our offspring, all 3 took up some form of music. One continued into early adulthood, but they're all very good audience members.
mm,
And I love to point out, years ago, I was chair of a school board, North Rockley High School, and I always loved every year pointing out to the principal the people on stage getting awards for community awards, academic awards, maths awards, sporting awards, etc. Almost 90% of the people getting those awards also were wearing a school string orchestra or band uniform. The
mm,
proven fact, the intellectual and physical development for musicians exceeds most other things.
mm.
And,
Yes, I had never really considered that. So that's a great point. Yes, very talented young people receiving awards, which is amazing.
and,
And
and,
I
and
think sorry, you
sorry,
go.
it's like often people are doing their final exam year, 2 years, whatever. It seems constant, more pressure at school now than when I went there back in the 60s, that many people say, oh, I wouldn't be able to afford the time to do it. But I found our principal trumpet player a few years ago had done her AMSA jam levels by the time they were in grade 10. They
Mm,
got the very top, whatever the OP score is, Kell nowadays in the state, and went up to do medicine. And yet they could fit in long distance running, other activities, community activities, and play in
mm,
the local brass band, Capricorn Silver Band, and the orchestra. They could fit it in because they just did. So,
mm. And you always find time for the things that you really want to do. Like I really dislike the word busy.
yeah.
People are too busy, or I really just dislike that word. People say that to me all the time. Oh, you're so busy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm intentional. I'm
Oh,
intentional with where I am and what I do.
yeah. And what's the other expression? If you want something done, ask a busy person. They know how to fit things in and
Mm.
be efficient in doing so.
They know how to delegate as well.
Delegation it's a absolute art rather than a science, because
Mm,
it's easy to delegate, but it's hard often to let go that someone will do it differently, different time frames, etc. You have to be
mm,
able to accept that
mm,
they're not going to do it the way you'd like, but they'll still do
mm-hmm.
it. that's often a
That
challenge. We're working on that.
That is a very good point. Yes, very good point. And it's a skill that you have to learn. I'm very lucky that I learnt it because I know when I hand something over, it is not going to get done the way that I would like it to be done. And I guess it reminds me of, when people ask their kids or partners, excuse me, to do something around the house, particularly mothers. And then they just end up doing it themselves because it won't get done the way I want it to get done. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be. Like, either teach your method or accept that it'll be different.
I don't know if my daughter will ever see this podcast. She's in Brisbane now, but if her room was always just, well, yeah, a nightmare. But we solved that not by telling her to clean it up. We solved it just by closing the door.
Yes, bedrooms are the pain of my existence. I have to ignore them.
Just close the door. Yeah, you can live me up.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell me a little bit, like before we hit record, you've got such incredible history and people that are visiting the Rocky region, professionals in the arts and music fields who are visiting Rocky. Tell me a little bit about what living in Rocky, being born and bred here, means to you and how it's shaped your story. And of course, you mentioned about if we had a state of origin for the arts, that we would attract so much more talent. But what would that look like to the Rockhampton community? Yes, go for gold.
Yeah, Rockhampton, if you look at the new restaurant in East Street in the old post office, where I worked many years ago, the postie on a push bike. It's the restaurant's called Sin, Sweat and Sorrow, which is all
Yes,
from the
it's my
tea towels
favourite.
from the Walter Reed printer that talks about Anthony Trollope. So Rockhampton had this history, a long history of settlement for tens of thousands here on Tanuba Fitzroy. The archers saw the Fitzroy and Gracemere off the Deer Range when they come up in the 1850s. And so Rockhampton had this transition from being a gold rush town, a mining export town from Mount Morgan, a rough and ready sort of place, pubs on every corner. But even back, if you look at the Phil Wright, the wonderful, unfortunately left us too early guitar player and jazz player, wrote the book Musical History of Rockhampton. There were groups of people going right back into the mid 1800s, 1860s. I only heard recently that I should really be remiss to not know this person. A person by the name of Alma Moody was one of the most world-famous violinists from the age of about 9. She was born in the late 90s and died during the war in Germany because that's where she'd been performing, and it was actually Allied bombing that killed her, which is quite tragic. She is an absolute icon within the international violin people. I'd love to have a theatre down performing arts centre called the Alma Moody Centre. I'll start working on that before I die. So
Yes.
we've exported many people in that regard. We've had people in our brass band world who've gone on to professional careers all around the state. If we could bring them back, we'd be the best band in Australia, I've often thought. We're people who are performing on stages in London. And from time to time, we get those people coming back and we've given them opportunities to be on stage. This will happen again at our concert in November. Someone who performed here from the age of high school through to when they had professional life in Brisbane, coming back to Rockhampton. In my own career, whenever I looked at promotions or transfers within my public service job, I looked for a town that had good art scene, bands and orchestras. And after living in Townsville, etc., for many years, I came back here because I knew that was the case. So we have an enormous talent of people across the musical circles. Dancing, we've had so many famous dancers go off to London Ballet, Moulin Rouge, etc. Just absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's been an inspiring journey. So we are a bit of everything at Rockhampton. We've got this great river system. We have this wonderful coastline near us. We have a diverse and changing set of industries from the original small gold rushes and sheep and wool, and then coal for the last 50, 100 years. Some of my ancestors worked on the opening of the Barralaba coal mine or on the building of the Mount Morgan mine, and we'll have a transition happening again. But I'm fairly sure Rockhampton, we sit nicely on the Tropic Capricorn. We're a bit monsoonal. Summers are bearable mostly. Our winters are absolutely gorgeous.
They
And
are.
I really think the more things we can do to promote the livable aspects, people come to a town to work for their careers or transfers, they'll stay if there's some great activities. And Rocky's basically got it all.
It really does. It really does. And it's not, as you said earlier, it's not just beef and bogans. But
But
that's words for burnouts, Rocky nuts, beef. What are we? Beef, burnouts, and barra. That's it.
yeah, Barry.
We need to throw the arts in there. Have we got some arts that starts with B that we could maybe throw in there?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah,
Mm.
I'll have to. I won't name Paul by name, but a former local MP whose name I did say was off to the opening of the Brown Park, and I remember Brown Park was when I used to jump over the fence to escape a sports day and go swim in the lagoons. And they spent a lot of money on Brown Park. That's wonderful for them. That's great. I said, now we've done that, Paul. How about we spend the $64 million on a concert hall?
Mm.
Smiled at me sweetly, and off he went to the opening of the football grounds. So
Mm.
it's I don't. It's we're competing all the time for
Mm.
people lives, busyness, school times, other activities, the crazy online activities we all get addicted to. It's an interesting
Mm.
world because once upon a time you'd have a mailing list, you send out a newsletter to people, you put it in the paper. People don't read the paper much anymore. They should. And
Mm.
we have to use that space. So we have to get people on their phones, but on their phones for interactive reasons rather than just doom scrolling.
Mm.
But
Yes.
nowadays, if communication is so instant, if we send out a message on our accounts, people can see it immediately. If I send out an email, it goes into someone's 120 pieces in
Mm.
the email box, and it's quite a changed world, which we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to adapt to you can't just put a big ad in the paper for the people who often don't buy the paper. So how do we get people involved in the whole range of activities? A bit of a bugbear of mine. I won't pick on burnout people. I just avoid them. Not the people, the burnout, the fireworks.
You're allowed to. You're allowed to, because I'm a self-confessed bogan burnout lover. So I'll take one for the team.
We used to do Christmas concert with a brass band in one of the local, St. Paul's Cathedral, for example. Great venue for a Christmas concert.
Mm.
And we've had up to 400 people pack it. But sometimes you'll be doing that, and in the middle of some quiet little Christmas carol, you hear the fireworks going off. I'm thinking, there's 10,000 people watching that for free. Why don't they come to a
Mm.
beautiful concert with a brass
Mm.
band? So it's a competitive environment, but we need
Mm.
to be able to, I suppose, compete in a friendly manner for the funding, for the eyes and
Mm.
ears of the audiences.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's probably and I can't talk to this because I don't know, of course, but it's probably you need to be quite selective, I'm guessing, with where you actually host beautiful concerts because you need to consider the acoustics and the sound, or is open air possible more frequently, do you think?
Yes, possibly. However, I've performed in say St. Paul's. It's
Mm.
great, and St. Joey's. If you've got the big cathedral and churches, the Salvation Army Hall
Mm.
are great for say band concerts because
Mm.
being a Salvo Hall, they've got a brass band and they made it acoustically good for a 30-piece band. Symphony orchestras, a bit tricky. You've got a lot of staging. When the
Mm.
symphony orchestra fully formed, performed at, say, the Heritage Village, great venue, but in the middle of summer, you die of the heat.
Mm.
And we could only fit 300 people. We're now bringing audience of up to 800. So we found a few venues like St. Brendan's, for example, in Yeppoon has a hall, but it's a bit obscure for people to know where it is or go there.
Mm.
Building theatre's become
Mm.
the only one. We've had to migrate to a hall that holds 6, 7, 800 plus people. It's a lyric theatre made for stage productions, and nowadays
Mm.
microphones, unlike the old municipal theatre where the library is now, was a wooden venue for normal voice. We have done outdoor concerts years ago before this orchestra was formed. We did concerts in the amphitheatre up above the Japanese Gardens for Yelena
Mhm.
Katsuchun, the Russian Australian composer, did Garden Symphony number 1 and 2, which have gone on to another life as the River Symphony. That
Mhm.
required massive staging. We had a 70-piece orchestra, 100-piece choir, etc. Weather. I've played in
Mm.
sound shells, playing the 1812 overture with a thunderstorm and lightning rolling over, and I'm carrying a large metal tube, which would be a lovely lightning rod. So here
Mm.
we've got massive circus tent type staging, quite a challenge.
Mhm.
And also, it's okay for brass band. We'll do that in things like the Relay for Life. We'll play outdoors, maybe on a stage with a cover over the top, but you can
Mm.
take a lot of orchestral instruments out in our 40-degree summer heat or in a torrential downpour. So it's a bit of a challenge.
Mm.
Sound shells are tricky, can be done, but it's a major staging activity. Yeah, so it's a constant challenge. When some towns, I've played in Bundaberg, for example, I've got brothers go and play in their orchestra. If you have a school that's lucky enough to have a big venue, we have
Mhm.
progressing that. There's some good ones now. I think TCC's got a really good concert hall, but it's
Mm.
it's a small audience. It's half the size we'd want. So yeah,
Yes.
it is a challenge.
Mm.
We've looked at things like in Brisbane, they've often run, so the Man from Snowy River with Sigrid
Mm.
Thornton and Tom Verlinson on stage talking about their experience. They've taken the soundtrack, the musical soundtrack out of the movie and played it with a live orchestra. Absolute wonderful experience. We've asked the
Yes.
people, and they can have 4,000 people in that venue. We asked the people, could we bring it to the Pilgrim? They said, unless you've got a $2,000 to $4,000 seat hall and
Mm.
you can put all the technology in there to sound balance the movie, etc. So yes, we are limited.
Mm.
It would cost a lot of money. You'd be talking $250,000 of staging just to do something like that. I've been
Wow.
lobbying various people about should if the Olympic rowing does actually happen in Rockhampton. I've even joked with the Minister for Arts and Education, said we could have the orchestra on pontoons in the river
Mm.
playing Handel's water music, which entertained the king back in 1760 or somewhere. But that would be a lot of staging, and
Mm.
with
It would
with
be amazing.
that's right. And yeah, I looked one time about it. We did wonder whether people would go to concerts where you have to pay, say, $50 plus a ticket. Because we often go to Brisbane, people often head off to Brisbane paying $150 a ticket plus their
Mm.
airfares. And many people say, okay, you've got professional productions, but many of the productions I've seen on stage here, whether it's Rocky Horror recently or The Messiah we did last year, people saying that's as good as I saw in Brisbane. Now, we know as musicians, we're not professionals. Some are,
Mm.
most of us aren't. Just been a long-term experience. But the theatres have to run at a better than break-even cost. But
Mm.
the people will, if you've got something of quality, well organised, well promoted, people will pay that sort of tickets. I did
Mm.
the other day about a $50 ticket 20 years ago really should be costing $90 now based on inflation. But we try to keep a bid
Yes.
on those types of things because we're conscious that people, there are cost of living pressures. If anyone looks outside or goes to the shops, one of the things we
Mm.
do is, for example, anyone 26 and under, you only pay your age. So it might be $50 a ticket, but if you're 23, you only pay $23 because that's a
I
future.
have seen that. Yes.
Recommend that to
Mm.
any groups looking at concession ticketing. So because we're a not-for-profit organisation, but you can't run at a loss. We don't make a
Correct.
profit, but you can't
Yes.
run at a loss. You're probably familiar with that
Mm.
with other things. We
Mm.
can go backwards in one concert. We can, as long as we balance it next time. And many times we rely on a loyal audience, a variety of what you do in whatever your entertainment or activity is, and we also rely on sponsors and constant writing of grant applications, which,
Mm.
which have driven me insane. But if you keep at it, you can have some success. But it's a fragile
Yes.
success at times.
It is. Yes.
Yeah, because people will go to things of value, but it's always picking what people will go to and what's a reasonable price for people to pay to encourage
Mm.
involved in whatever activity that is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. So lots of challenges and lots of highlights across the industry, and lots to consider. And I think absolutely keep advocating. Why can't we get a music concert hall with the 2032 Olympic funding? Like, sure, rowing and music goes together. Like,
Yeah,
what a legacy project for Rocky.
very.
Mm.
They're both very much. Music is essentially rhythm with some melody
Mm.
attached to it. Rowing,
Mm.
it's very. I'm a kayaker, not a rower. I go forward,
Mm-hmm.
not backwards, and
Yes.
sometimes we have to dodge the rowing back to the river, but it's all good fun and shared. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
rhythmic activity and it engages the mind and body.
Yes, yes. And there are so many opportunities with 2032 around the corner as well. And it's our opportunity right now to leverage it and lobby and advocate for what this region needs. So I'm 100% behind you.
Yeah, and I think there's beginning recognition that Queensland had always been the most decentralised state. It has
Mm.
changed, but now like southeast Queensland, from sunny coast to the Toowoomba and Gold Coast, is just blowing up in terms of population.
Mm.
Small rural towns are struggling, and particularly if the mining changes go up and down. We go back to I think it was the 80s when the orchestras stopped coming up on a regular basis. There are some smaller groups coming very shortly, actually. But I think there is a recognition that there needs to be some additional. The government recently put in the regional community arts program. It's only started last
Mm.
experimental. We want to make sure this works. A few groups in Mount Morgan and Yeppoon and the orchestra and the youth orchestra also received the first tranche of that funding, and that goes till the end of next year. We're hoping to make it work and really show great success to keep encouraging that. Because when you're in Brisbane, there are other challenges. Getting from A to B in Brisbane can be a challenge, even that.
Mm.
But they can normally call on people at not much expense. If we have to call on an extra person to come up, say we need a cello player, that often requires 2 seats on an aeroplane because they have to put the cello on board,
Yes.
that type of thing. So I think there's a recognition that they need to support that. Otherwise, little towns or places will just stagnate, and that becomes a social problem as well. I've often argued
Mm.
that an economist would call it a positive externality. In other words, the value of a sporting club, a musical group, a dance group, etc., is often immeasurable in terms of the psychosocial benefits it brings to a town, and
Yes.
a $10,000 grant can be paid off in multi-hundreds of times in terms of the
Mm.
life's enjoyment of the people and our physical mental health.
Absolutely agree. And while it might be exploding in the southeast corner, we all know what we're sitting on here.
Yeah.
We've just got to wait. Like those people will come up eventually, and they'll also realize what we've got here.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm.
and I've been involved a lot in urban planning in my different jobs in natural resource management, conservation. How do we preserve?
Mm.
I mean, I was involved years ago in writing with my brother and others, writing submissions to get the forest reserve on Mount Archer declared national park, and more recently,
Mm-hmm.
right, yeah. So I've been involved for a long time in preserving, and same thing with Blackdown Tablelands. So when you come here,
Mm.
we are a livable city. You can actually walk across it in a day if you find it. Traffic gets a bit heavy sometimes on the bridges, but it's usually only a bit here and there. But we are
Yes.
surrounded by this lovely bushland at the arches, the
Yeah.
wetlands and creeks, and we're only half an hour from the beach, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it has it all. We just need to keep that in mind. And if we do increase population, we can, but as urban sprawl has become a bit of a nightmare, you need to think about, there's so many suburbs in Rockhampton where it's the old worker houses of the 50s and 60s, which over time
Mm.
they've talked about maybe those could be revitalised with not high rise, but slightly more compact,
Mm.
with transport hubs, cycleways, etc. And
Mm.
as we've seen, lots more coffee shops, which give venues for your guitar playing family to maybe do gigs at times to get paid in coffee.
Yes.
I've done that before.
Yes. Well, that restaurant that you mentioned earlier, Sin, Sweat and Sorrow, in the old post office building, they've now introduced live music on a Sunday,
Yep,
and it
fantastic.
is absolutely exceptional. You probably know him, but Chris Schick Acoustic, he's been playing there.
I don't know the name
Mm.
particularly. Go along and check it out. Yeah.
Mm. Absolutely beautiful music. Mm.
Yeah. Well, I've played in folk bands and guitar, as well as my
Mm.
tuba and the orchestra and other things. But at
Mm.
folk festivals, we've had Macedonian Gypsy folk street bands and Irish bands,
Mm.
Australian bush ballad bands. Played at Glenmore Homestead with George. I went to
Yeah.
school with, Heritage,
Mm.
etc. So there is great opportunity for that, and it makes a whole
Mm.
difference to the piped music that some venues have. So that the
Yes,
more of it, the better. And we've got
absolutely.
so many venues, the old buildings of East Street and East Lane and
Mm.
all those ones. Been a few good goes at getting them into that sort of space. It's often a
Mm.
challenge economically, but that can be supported, and that creates enormous opportunity rather than just the corner pubs. Not the
Mm.
corner pubs. I've been to a few.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think my son would be a very good fit for Sin, Sweat and Sorrow though, because Metallica's not really their vibe.
Yeah, I'd go for Metallica or Jimi Hendrix, someone playing that, or blues.
Yeah.
Many years ago, a friend and I would ride our motorbikes to the Crown Hotel, which is where the two
Mhm.
professors is now, and
Mhm.
Phil Wright before left the planet too early, Phil, but Phil Wright and jazz groups, Joey Delandy, many others I can name, and they'd have jazz in the afternoons. Now, mind you, don't tell
Mhm.
everyone. We'd have a few beers and ride our motorbikes home, but I wouldn't do that nowadays. But yeah, so
No.
we have had that happen, and then poker machines came, and sometimes I'd be playing in a club somewhere, competing with the jangle poker machines. But
Mm.
the better places can put them in their own discreet soundproof spot, and more live
Yep.
music. I'd love to have it. Yeah.
Mm. It would be fantastic. So in your very experienced landscape of music and the Rocky region, there, of course, in life, we have significant challenge and we also have really, really proud moments. So I'm wondering, you can talk to both if you want, but, what's been something that's happened, whether it be a challenge or whether it is a proud moment, something that's happened that's really, maybe changed your perspective or shifted gears and pointed you in a different direction? Has anything like that happened across your time?
Certainly career-wise, I'd had what you would argue was a successful public service career, done public service and travelled around the countryside. But I jumped ship before I was 50 and worked in many other things in community services and in urban landscape design with their creeks, etc., and had about a third of the pay for a much more rewarding experience. So that was a big change, which also it meant that I could fill up, had more time, I suppose, less travel, because quite often, and that's one of the challenges for everyone here, so many people are fly in, fly out, drive in, drive out workers, and finding a day when everyone's there for your dance or your concert is often a challenge because people are away. So that was a big change that allowed more flexible working arrangements for myself, and that allowed me to expand things. Some other big moments were having come back after some years in North Queensland and Darwin, Canberra. I decided to come back to Rocky. Mum was still alive here, ex-Mount Morgan person, and it was great to come back. And at that point, our band, the Capricorn Silver Band, had been progressing its way from the lowest grades up to A grade and could perform at the top level nationally in A grade. And that around that time, as a regional band, it's a rarity apart from some exceptions like Cairns, where the local Capricorn Silver Band has won the state brass band championships 3 times against all the competition of the semi-professional almost groups in Brisbane who've got big raft of people in conservatoriums to draw. That was a big moment to show we can do it. We can overcome the tyranny of distance. That was a great moment. And of course, the formation of the orchestra, and last year, when we were approached by the European Choral Society for their 60th anniversary, can we do the Handel's Messiah? Massive undertaking. And people said, oh, people wouldn't come to it or it might make a loss or something. Well, we did better than break even and we had 1,400 people attend. So to me, there are so many highlights like that. In many cases, I listened to a professional violinist from England who now performs with Australian Chamber Orchestra, said on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't do what we do because it's just too solid, too stressful, organising, all that sort of stuff. But you go out and perform or you do your big event and you come away so high, you jump back in the pool and you'll do it again. So the rewards are every time we get on that stage, and which is why I encourage everyone, whether you're a 3-year-old doing their first Eisteddfod, even if it's the only time, that will give you a confidence in life to do whatever public speaking or presentation of your thesis or interview with the boss over something. It'll give you more confidence than somebody who's never tread the boards. Encourage that group. So there's so many moments.
The stage is, yes, the stage is quite powerful, especially when you're exposed to it as a young child.
Yeah.
I remember being put in an Eisteddfod. I think I was in primary school for singing. I don't know why. I'm the worst singer. I do not know why. The nuns at the Sisters of Mercy used to teach me to sing because my mum worked up there. And yeah, I mean, maybe I was good. I'm not sure. There's no video cameras or anything from that.
Well,
can't sing today.
If we do another choral orchestral concert, which is a lot of interest in doing from our local singers, and particularly we're talking about maybe a concert sometime in the next few years of operatic overtures, which are dramatic. We did Magic Flute, a very dramatic piece of opening for our concert, and we're talking about that, some arias, some of the great favourite opera pieces. So you never know, we might ring you and say, would you like to come along? And even if
you won't want me.
If you mouth the words and you stand beside someone who can sing, you can just pretend. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah. I try and sing the national anthem and I think to myself, what do I sound like? This is not good. Maybe I need some more lessons.
We are all our worst critics usually. Yeah.
Oh, tell me, Michael, it is tricky even though I'm not in it like you are, it is tricky to be in the arts industry. I've got many friends that operate in different pockets of it. So there's been, things that you have to get through, and some days are harder than others to get up and keep going. But what is that thing that keeps pushing you forward to progress arts in the Rocky region? And what advice would you give to people either wanting to get involved or not sure how to get involved?
Yes, it's like the struggle of learning singing or an instrument, the struggle of being on committees and enticing people to take it's just, well, to be honest, it's a nightmare. However, and even like I went to the National Band Championships in Brisbane this year with the Capricorn Silver Band, and the music was quite challenging. And every time, if I didn't play for a day, I'd pick the instrument up and think I was a beginner. If you remember, the main thing you're there is not for your own ego or I'm really good at this. When you go there and go on that stage and you get a response from the audience, wow, it's like the only drugs I've had are probably coffee and maybe a beer. But that is like such a powerful motivator. It'll get you back. It's an addictive thing. So it's really, and we have to remind ourselves all the time when there's a problem with, I don't want to sit with that person, or there's an issue of who didn't do something in time with that email or something. You just remember we are here for that audience, and we know. I mentioned neurology before. I love the neurologists who talk about the effect of music on the brain. And when you play music, when you're performing, singing live, your heartbeat matches music. Your heartbeat and your feel-good natural hormones transfer to the audience, and your heartbeats match the rhythm, the excitements, the slow, the sad parts. It's just a magic. And that's why throughout culture, throughout history, long before symphony orchestras existed, whether it's drumming on wood or the bone flutes that our way back Neanderthal cousins had in Europe, they are part of bringing people together into a single line of almost I know it's hard to describe. I'm not a neurologist, but yeah, I've read about them. It brings heartbeats and relaxation or excitement to the whole group, and that is such a buzz. That's why you keep doing it, regardless of all the other. Even, I guess, people who go to watch burnouts get that buzz, but I'm not sure about that.
Yes.
I'd get
And
palpitations.
people who participate in drag racing as well. I love doing that.
Well, the only drag racing I've done, I've been involved in was when my brother Don had his car, and he was a Telstra technician, PMG, got the first set of street lights in Rocky, and that became the drag strip. But we shouldn't
Oh
talk.
my goodness. Well, it was many, many years ago, so I don't think you can get in trouble anymore.
Holden HDs against Zephyrs. The Holden was better.
Well, that's gold. Absolute gold. So I have one more question for you. And, in life, we all have these mantras or little sayings and, or something that you might share with the next generation. What is that for you? What is something that you always come back to and you pass on to people looking for advice?
I've often thought, just with our orchestra currently, my main activity for the moment is it's impossible to run a semi-professional standard orchestra in regional Queensland. That's why we do it. And that the mantra, therefore, would be that it's in music, for example, or any activity, people say, oh, this is going to be hard. And you think about, wait a minute, turn that around and say, it's not easy yet. So if you're practicing an art or learning how to write job applications or run committee meetings, it's hard. Okay, what can I do to learn better, to manage that better through all sorts of means? So think about it. It's not hard. It's just not easy yet, and it can be done. Despite all of the obstacles placed in front of you. So many people say, do you still play music? I learned, but something happened. So well, it's never too late. So it can be done. You don't necessarily have to aspire to be the world famous violinist like we had Alma Moody, wanting to remember her name. But yeah, it's just not easy yet. Find people who can help you.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely love that. And that does stop people from doing a lot of things, not just in the music or arts world, but, because it's hard and it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's just not easy yet, because the more that we tackle something, it just gets easier. So that is fantastic advice. Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for carving out this time for me.
Thank you for the opportunity. People say I talk too much. I hope that wasn't too much.
No, I loved it. The amount of history you've shared and woven into the stories of arts and music is incredible. And I'm very, very thankful for it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give a plug to our returning Rockhampton person who's coming up in November. Maybe I'll get a spot for her.
Yes. Yes.
I'll refer her to you. Thank you.
Yes, that would be amazing. That would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you. But yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, proudly brought to you by Marketing Unagency Co., the marketing team who do things very differently and who are determined to make the world of marketing less chaotic and far clearer for small businesses and community groups.